All right, good morning to you once again. Thank you so much for being with us here in Morning at NTV. Thursday is the day, and our Kickstarter is going to be focusing on the education sector. I am Priscilla Regina Naloga. Once again, good morning. Now, our focus is going to be on ensuring quality in higher institutions of learning, transforming the education sector, and also looking at the financial year 2024-2025. Where are the hits and the misses as far as the education sector is concerned? And that is on public and private side. Now, is Uganda's education system also outdated 60 plus years down the road? Well, the backbone of it is that the Ugandan education system has developed in different stages ever since the colonial times. However, the philosophy and methodology upon which it was built has become obsolete and irrelevant to the needs of the contemporary society. Part of the discussion that Chris and I were having earlier, of course. And so therefore, the philosophy, the school systems, the methods of instruction, the curriculum, the measurements, the assessments have all been calling for a revision of things here and there. Now, of course, government response to the calling started with a shakeup in the curriculum of the lower level secondary education. However, for higher institutions of learning, things have still remained on a rough patch. Advocacy has been made, voices have been heard, but no action has been moved yet through the Ministry of Education and Sports. And therefore, we are going to be looking to some of those elements and why there's still some stringent elements of adopting to new ways of learning as far as the higher institutes of education are concerned. We also do have the issue at the National Council of Higher Education, where its Executive Director Mary Ojakwol rejected the reappointment of Professor Elly Katunguka for the Council Chairpersonship, which many educationists anticipate is yet to affect, especially accreditation and reaccreditation of courses on higher institutions. So today we open the pages on the education sector, and of course the voices in studio with me are definitely the perfect ones to give us an insight of how things are going to be running with all these different elements existing within the institutions of higher education. But before we do that, we had a sit down with Professor Elly Katunguka, and this is what he had to share with us on the subject matter.
Should I congratulate you, or should I say sorry for you?
No, my name is Katunga Chair. I'm the Vice Chancellor of Kyambogo University and the Chairperson of the National Council for Higher Education. I'm also the Chair of the Forum of Vice Chancellors of Public Universities. And that forum has seconded you to be the Chairperson, to represent it at the Council. Yes, Mouhammad Mpezamihigo, I need to make it clear here. Section 7 of the Universities and Other Tertiary Institutions Act give the composition of the National Council for Higher Education. It gives the composition, it gives the constituencies that nominate people to serve on the National Council for Higher Education. These constituencies include public universities, vice chancellors, private universities, vice chancellors, the senates of public universities, the senates of private universities, members from the public. It also includes members from the religious organizations, which are non-degree awarding, like the farmers, people from commerce, people from the industry, the whole list of members of the National Council for Education. It does not prescribe how these members are selected. The Act assumes that these organizations have their internal mechanisms of identifying people to represent them. The challenge I've had with the Professor Ojakwol, he has failed to understand her role as the Secretary to the Council and the Council. So she has tried to take over the role of the Council. When a member is nominated to serve on the National Council for Education, her role is to recognize that this person has been sent. It's not her role to reject any nomination. That's not her role.
You know, Professor, I've at least attended many engagements at council offices on Chugobe Road, where you have been seated next to Professor Mary Ojakwol, the executive director, and you seem to be working in harmony. What came around this time around? What is the cause of the problem?
I want to be very clear with you. Since 2019 up to last year, I tried to work very well with this lady, despite numerous complaints from members of staff about her conduct, right from 2021, about fraudulent practices, changing minutes of council, altering minutes of council, delaying to submit documents for council to meet, so disregarding guidelines and procedures set down by the council. Now, when I try to put all these things into perspective and say, we must try and do the right thing, that's where the problem started. Because I pointed out, the guidelines must be followed. The procedures in our National Council Charter must be followed. Now, when they were being not followed, when they were not being followed, that's what caused the problem. For example, she rejects a student who has been nominated to represent students on the council. Our guidelines say, once you are a student and you are nominated to serve on the council, you remain a member of the National Council for as long as you remain a student. Now for the student
at this time that we've seen so many university courses coming, and then also, in quotes, what they termed as expired courses.
Yeah, I had not finished a little bit. So when this student was nominated, the ED appointed him for 1 year. The student complained. I said, but this is against our guidelines. Now there was another member from the Chamber of Commerce who was nominated, and Ojakwol rejected the nomination. She went to the Chamber of Commerce to request the Chamber of Commerce to withdraw this person. This is unethical, and I have been...
You tried to engage the superior body, that is Ministry of Education, over such internal matters?
Yes,
there are inefficiencies within the council.
Let me tell you, we had a meeting with the First Lady, and I raised all these issues and many, many other issues, many.
And nothing was done? And
she was shocked that these things were happening. Ojakwol raised her issues also. What she told us to do was to say, go and work together to serve this country. And I have great respect for the lady. I have respect for the lady. She said, go and work together. Since then, I had not communicated anything until Ojakwol wrote to council members saying Katunguka is not a member of council and is not the chairperson of the National Council for Education.
Of the contract. But did you actually, you yourself, write to the appointing authority requesting for another extension, as he said?
Let me clear it this way. We must distinguish between appointment on first term and renewal of contract. When you are being appointed for the first term, I want you to capture this clearly.
Because
let me first make it clear. When you are being appointed for the first term, the guidelines are clear. The council writes to the minister, giving her 2 names to be forwarded to the president to choose one. When you are being appointed for the first term, and that's what happened in 2019. When it comes to the renewal of contract, the practice has been that the incumbent writes the appointing authority requesting for renewal of contract. I did that in January.
Do you feel there's unfinished business? Maybe you need to...
Let me first finish. So I did that in January 2024. I wrote to the president, giving him what I had done and requesting for renewal of contract. And I wrote through the First Lady with the Minister of Education. The First Lady said, I have no objection, and sent that recommendation to the President. And the President in May responded that he has no objection to my reappointment In my view, that was clearance for reappointment. This same practice happened when you look at the renewal of contracts of the previous chairpersons of council. Professor Kayanja, when he was the chairperson of National Council, his renewal did not go through getting 2 names first and then the president. Professor Penmogi, when he was chairperson of National Council, he wrote to the minister forwarded the recommendation to the president appointed him.
Was there?
Now, let me clarify this one a little bit. Okay. The same analogy can be made with the vice chancellor's appointments. When the vice chancellor is being appointed for the first time, there is a search committee which identifies people, sends them to Senate and then to Council, and Council nominates the person to become a vice chancellor. After the first term of the vice chancellor, the renewal is dependent on appraisal because they have already identified that you can serve as a vice chancellor. So for a follow-on term, the council appraises you and recommends the chancellor for reappointment. You do not go through the search process again. Professor. So whoever is involved in this fracas must distinguish between appointment for the first term and renewal of contract. That is where Professor Ojakwol has failed to understand.
Whom you've been working together for some time, why would she all of a sudden want to block you from having another contract renewal? Why? Because
I've come to believe that the issues members of staff were raising were true, including alteration of council minutes, including foreign practices on finances. And when I tried to address these, this is what the cause of the problem. And I got many petitions from members of the council, even members of the public, writing petitions to me.
These fights are going
when I try to address these petitions, that's the cause of the bad blood.
You know?
And again, what I notice is that there are some people in the Ministry of Education who are trying to cover her up. Yes, in the Ministry of Education, who are trying to cover her up.
Are you at liberty naming some of those?
No, I don't want to name them, but you can find out. Because for Professor Ojakwol, wherever she has been, we have had problems. Right from Bustema.
When she was the vice chancellor?
Yes. There was a due diligence we conducted. It was not good. And I don't blame her. Somebody who has never been a head of department, somebody who has never been a dean,
but she has been a vice chancellor.
To be catapulted to that level.
In a public institution.
That's why you end up with those issues. You don't know how to relate to people. So the problem with Ojakwol has failed to know the extent of her authority.
Do you think there will be harmony when you see such after you've been confirmed and also this coming at the heels of this bad blood, her trying to force you out? Do you think there will be harmony going forward, working together anymore?
You see, harmony can come about when two people agree to work together. I told you we had a meeting with the First Lady in which she said, go and work together. And I agreed to that. But this lady, I don't want to say a lot of negative things about her. She must be brought to a level where she understands that she's not the council. She is only a secretary to the council. And she must also be brought to a level where she understands that the council supervises her. And she does not supervise the council. So she's not my supervisor. I, as the chairperson of council, am her supervisor. Now she wants to take over the council and run it the way she wants. And she has some cover of some people somewhere. And this is very unfortunate because we must have order in the council. We must follow guidelines and regulations which we put in place.
You know, some critics have been saying that, you know, when you have some people running institutions, public institutions like Professor Elly Katunguka running Kyambogo University as a vice chancellor, but also sitting at the helm of the National Council for Education, could also put you in a collision path in terms of conflict of interest. For example, if you have to, there are issues within Kyambogo University. that are going to the council, there could be some conflict of interest.
Let me be selfish. In this country, there's nobody who understands higher education dynamics than me. You can check it out. Since 1976, I have worked in higher education. I've gone through all the levels. So the framers of the law, if you want to ask anything about the higher education, you ask me. I raised the issue of the conflict of interest right from the time Professor Kayanja was the chairperson of the National Council. And when I went to the National Council, I insisted the law must be changed to remove vice chancellors from becoming chairpersons of the National Council, because I'm aware of the conflict of interest you're talking about. But when you have grown to a level like where we have grown, like me, I would not bend down to bend the regulation to favor Kyambogo University. If a program is not accredited, it is not accredited. If you don't have science lab facilities, you don't have them. So you can't start arguing that because I'm Kyambogo, because I'm on the council, these things are there. No, they are either there or they are not there.
Granted.
But what we have proposed is that the law should be changed to provide for a leaner national council, because now you have a national council about 24, 25 people. It's like a marketplace. That's why the lady can use her money to buy members of council left and right, because people need little money here and there, and you can buy their favors.
Thank you so much, Professor Elly Katunguka, Vice Chancellor of Kyambogo University, who is also the chairperson of National Council for Education, has just gotten a new mandate.
All right, thank you so much, Stephen Mbidde, for bringing us to the ears of the thoughts of Professor Elly Katunguka, the Vice Chancellor for Kyambogo University. I'm privileged to also be having Vice Chancellors with us here in studio who would like to quickly have a response to some of the things that have been mentioned. For example, one of the things that Professor Elly has mentioned is that no one understands matters of higher education more than he does. Privileged to be sitting next to the Vice Chancellor, Equator University of Science and Technology, and this is Vice Chancellor Mpezamihigo. Mouhammad, good morning to you.
Good morning, Priscilla. Nice to be here.
Nice to have you in a different capacity.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Last time we had this very same discussion about 2 years ago, and you were in different capacity, but you remain in the same.
Now I'm grooming Equator University of Science and Technology, having delivered my successful package at KIU 9 years.
All right.
So still together. In higher education.
Well, another vocal advocate of higher education and the changes that must be is Professor Muganga Lawrence with Victoria University as the Vice Chancellor. Good morning to you, Professor.
Very good morning to you. Good morning, viewers. And I also congratulate my colleague here.
Thank you.
And whatever he touches becomes successful. Trust me, Equator University is destined to be great.
Thank you so much for the compliments.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So speaking of which, you have also been a council member for about 10 years, and you've been best positioned to actually react to what is happening between the secretary to the council and the chairperson of the council.
Yeah. First of all, good morning, our viewers. It's unfortunate that we can have a scenario of this magnitude where the executive director of the National Council, who is the head of the secretariat, because the National Council for Higher Education has a team, a technical team, and so Professor Ojakwol is the head of that technical team. She is the CEO who should be implementing the decisions of the board, the council. Now pulling a rope with the chairperson of the council, and the exchange getting out of hand and leaks into the public domain is not a good thing at all. Something has to be done to put the two colleagues to the table. And for us who are being regulated, if you are regulated, you, the regulator, must be smart in the regulatory framework. I mean, if there are any breaches, because each side has issues, the ED has her own complaints, the chairperson of the council also has what looks like also gaps in the roles of the ED trying to take the function of the council. So if there are those gaps and there is no clarity at that level, at the secretariat level and also at the governing council level, then us who are regulated will just be in a bit of confusion, because if you can't manage your own regulatory framework, then for us the institutions will be the grass. So it's like the two elephants fighting, and this is the grass that is going to suffer, because from the talk of Professor Katunguka, you can easily see there are several allegations. Some are from institutions, some are from the public domain. But of course, if you speak to Ojakwol, should also probably have her own side of the story. So we need to put this to order. This is my brief remark about what is happening. All right.
As media was simply the fourth estate, you know, to extend these things to the public. However, people who are directly being affected are the institutions. Professor Muganga, in this case, yourself being affected by the two elephants fight. Appointing authority, not appointing authority, who supervises who, those seem to be lost in translation just between these two people, which has not predominantly been the case with the previous persons that were in these offices of the executive director on the other side and the chairperson on this other side.
Thank you, Priscilla. Let me tell you and viewers, personally, I'm not worried at all. These people are family. Like we are into the higher education arena, and those fights are going to be there. Okay. We have bigger problems. This is not a problem. There are fundamental facts, though, we need to consider that these two people are distinguished members of the higher education fraternity. Take nothing away from them. You cannot. As far as I know, they are very incorruptible. You can't corrupt any, at least for the record that I know from I've not had the opportunity to work so much with, to know so much about Professor Katunguka, but of course his public record is also showing. I have also had the opportunity to work with, as the ED of National Council for Higher Education. She's a woman of her word. You can't corrupt her. She means business, and she has higher education in her hands or fingertips. So I'm not worried about that. Whatever you're seeing is passion to serve this country, passion to serve higher education. So and the other fact that we know is that they all have a boss. Okay, all of us have supervisors. Okay, so she will sit, the Honorable Minister of Education, she will sit them down, and she will ask them to serve this country diligently. And on top of that, there is also an appointing authority, His Excellency the President. He will sit them down and he will resolve this matter. But all of us. I wish they were talking about the outdated higher education system that we have. That's the biggest problem that we have, not these wrangles. These wrangles are minor. Ugandans don't worry about that. We have seen bigger problems. All right. Yes, but the two members are incredible people. Take nothing away. I don't know about one who says he's the best in higher education. That one, you can take it with a grain of salt. He's great in his own capacity, but we can be great, but our higher education, we can know so much about. It's not as great right now. Exactly. Which should be our focal point. Okay, all right. Many educationists, of course, out there are anticipating that this can affect accreditation and reaccreditation of some of the courses in higher institutions of learning. The elephant's fight will dig into the impact of this if it's not resolved in time, but also the other elements, especially in reflection of the financial year that we are in, 2024-2025. And how is it meeting the needs of the higher education sector? Do stay with us right after this break.
Welcome back. We still continue on with our Kickstarter. Earlier on, we had from the horse's mouth the chairperson for the council, and him speaking to us about the wrangle between him and the executive director, and that is Professor Mary Ojakwol. Now, of course, the conflict has been on and on, still ongoing, could be affecting business as far as the duties of the National Council of Higher Education are concerned. My name is Priscilla Regina Nelwoga. I am definitely joined by Vice Chancellors who are also part and parcel of this discussion, both of course by voice and opinion, but also by dispensation of their duties. They could be affected, their universities are affected, their students are affected, and the education sector by and large are affected. On the extreme left, Professor Muganga, Vice Chancellor for the Victoria University, and of course with my immediate left you do have Vice Chancellor for Equator University of Science and Technology, and that is Mpezamihigo Mouhammad. Now, of course, they gave their first opinions and responses to what Professor Elly Katunguka mentioned earlier. Now, it begs the question on how this is going to be affecting the duties, the responsibilities of the council, especially in assessment. You do have about 16,000 courses that require assessment, and this should be the process and period of that assessment. However, if we're having this fight here, will that process be affected?
I think the manifestation we are seeing between the conflict, the conflict between the ED, the executive director, and the chairperson of the council, may be a symptom of something maybe bigger within the secretariat, because the governing council sits periodically, whereas the council secretariat does the work on a 24/7 basis. And then they do the administrative visitations, they generate reports. For every inspection that is done in an institution, there's a technical person from the National Council who goes back and then they compile and then prepare business for council. Now, it appears definitely something needs to be done. The ED has got to do a quick cross-check, because it appears there are leakage points within her team that are availing information out there, and then some of the council members may also be finding themselves becoming partisan to certain sides. So I think it's an example of intrigue that sometimes hits universities or higher education institutions. Okay. There are different interests, there are different parties, there are people who are focused on different things. So what you see now within our regulator is a typical daily occurrence in universities. You'll find a dean who is not in agreement with the academic registrar.
Professor Muganga is shaking his head and nodding.
Yes, like, absolutely. Yes,
actually, you may even
find
have those in your university.
No, so the National Council is our mother institution. Yeah. It's a reflection of what universities should be. So we normally have these, and sometimes staff petition the National Council saying, you see, I was wrongly suspended, I was removed from deanship. They write to the National Council writes to the Vice Chancellor, can you explain? You know, when students have issues, they run to the National Council. Yes. Now, where does the National Council run to? Okay? Yeah. It has to be the Ministry of Education and Sports that has to come out clearly and say, this is what has to be done. The appointing authority also has to clarify things. But back to the point of whether this may or may not affect the accreditation process, the role of the National Council is definite, because there has to be calmness, there has to be focus, there has to be unity within the National Council. For us who submit programs, we don't want delays. We also want, once a visitation or an inspection has been done, we should get a report, we should get feedback, we should be able to engage. But now, the final approving authority is the council, which is chaired by Professor Katunguka and his team. Whereas the National Council Secretariat does the technical preparation of business. Okay. So now, if there are doubts from the Secretariat and also doubts coming from the council, then we need an urgent intervention to put things to order so that whatever the problem is addressed before we are affected. And as you have said, a lot of backlogs still exist. we are looking at the way forward. We have been urging with my colleague here and others, shouldn't we now be thinking about self-regulation?
Yes.
You set the standards, and we are into competition. If an institution falls below the standard, then, I mean, the students will not even join. The staff will not even be associated. They will even be hiding their employability with that institution.
Okay.
So this is where we need to some kind of firm position to clarify things and say, look, everything is
I think the clarity is there as far as the structures and systems are concerned. The clarity is there. I think it's just the two people. But nevertheless, I know that on a larger scale, it does affect other elements of the higher education institutes. Let's talk about those.
You know, it is beyond borders. Recently, a couple of months ago, Nigeria wanted to blacklist institutions, Uganda institutions. Previously, last year, when we had this talk, the hype about expiration of academic qualifications, it went global. So if a regulator has issues, if there is fire in the regulator's home, then the confidence, the public confidence at the national, the regional, and global stages are going to be affected. It's just black and white.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, black and white. So we still have to find the lines of harmony in there, Professor Muganga. What are the opportunities that lie within this crisis?
One, actually, like I said, that is not something that we should worry about a lot. And actually, if I were in their shoes right now, both of them, I should worry about one thing, both. The resources that the National Council must have to be able to accomplish its mandate. They don't have the resources. You talked about the 1,600 courses or more pending accreditation. And that's a big problem for universities. You submit programs and they sit for years, okay? And the program expires before, if that is a word, right? If that is a word, because it's also contestable, right? Expires before it even gets to be implemented. Right? So that's a huge problem. So I would love to see Professor Ojakwol, Professor Katunguka on one team, actually advocating for more resources so that they can do their job. They have a bigger job to do, okay, to make us better, us, the higher education institutions. That's the opportunity that they should really jump on as council and as management to move us forward, right? This is, I would actually love to see them seeking an appointment on their own, like this is a tactical kind of seeking an appointment on each on their own, and then they meet there, they have agreed in the background, the appointing authority or the honorable minister expects them to come before them complaining, and then they say, no, we are here. Our differences aside, we are here to ask for more resources to make higher education better. All right? That's what we are looking for. Otherwise, you cannot have a lean organization as small as council, national council. And I can talk about the leanness as well later on. Trying to regulate. All of us, we have, if you look at universities, I think we are over 50, okay? If you look at other institutions, I think you're going over 200. So you have less than 100 staff. How do you expect those people to oversee? And the people, you talk about accrediting programs and reviewing them. It is our staff, his staff, our staff at our university doing that, and they have to be paid as well. So resources are not enough. So the government needs to inject more resources into this National Council for Higher Education. They talk about even mismanagement. I don't even know if they even have resources to mismanage. They don't. So they need to be given more resources for them to do their job. But I still have hope in the system. There is an ED, there are technical people. Professor Mpeza has just told you that. It is a technical body, okay? A secretariat. It has people. There are council members. If there is no chairperson, there is a vice chairperson, but I'm not sure even the chairperson is going anywhere. He's going to be there. They are going to work together for the good of us.
Yeah.
I'm sure that is the passion to make higher education better. We should focus on the biggest elephant in front of us, making higher education relevant for Ugandans to deliver on their higher education promise. We all grew up knowing that the moment you have a degree, you are very relevant to your community, and you're going to make life for yourself, your family, your entire country. But now it's no longer the case. So what are we fighting for?
Yeah.
We should fight to restore that promise. So that's the opportunity we should really look for if we are really interested in moving forward our country. But where we are right now, we may even be juggling all this and talking about programs being affected, but even them, they are outdated already. Even what is accredited.
They're not speaking to the global,
to the real world today.
Okay, so let's get into the debate right now, because I think for a very long time there's been that debate between, for example, what we have on ground. Let's take the case of primary education. You have the international curriculum, and then you do have the traditional curriculum or the local curriculum. And over time now, parents have had to tilt and break an arm and a leg to afford the international education because they believe it propels their children to be better, or better competition to the market out there. On the other side, you do have parents who are still stuck with the tradition. One, they can't afford the other side. Two, they also believe strongly because there are evidence of this traditional education. We were having this debate with Chris the other day that those of us who went to traditional schools, you could see, creme de la creme. Not to brag, but
no.
But now these things have changed by and large, to the extent that some of the investors in the education system are even choosing to call their schools and put the word international, but when they're not delivering on that side. So it's breaking the system that was already outdated in the first place, Mr.
Yeah, well, with time things have to change. The generation, I want us to look at the population, the dynamics, the demography of our population. In the past, fewer people were in schools. They had access to so many things. The teachers were dealing with manageable numbers. The resources were there. They were standard. It didn't matter which secondary school you went to in our time.
Yes.
It was all, similar standards, and they would even they would just throw you to any school where you fit best. It doesn't matter whether it was in the West Nile or whichever place in the country. And so over time, the dynamics have changed within the country. They have changed within the region and also internationally. And the evolution of digital innovation, this has collapsed the entire colonial system of education. Absolutely. And we are still decades behind schedule. And this is an area where my colleague here, Professor Muganga, is good at. So I'm in favor of change. And the way the change is coming is also maybe a bit slow, but we do appreciate, for example, the secondary school education, lower secondary school has been adjusted. The primary school probably is in the pipeline, the A-level system. There are even debates actually about should we scrap A-level. Now, the university system is a bit inelastic. We are still, and this also connects to our discussion with the National Council. So the National Council should also interest itself in what is happening in the lower levels of education. Because if they want to accredit our curricula, they should be asking the question, how does your curriculum in the university system link with the people who are coming up? Because we wait and receive people coming from the lower levels of education. So change has to come. Now, who is influencing change? Let us not forget the global dynamics. Okay? So funding, the state gets funding from World Bank, from other donor agencies, they call them development partners. Sometimes there's an agenda to move towards change in education. At Equator University, for example, when I took the mantle recently, I discussed with my team the need for us to align whatever we are doing with the sustainable development goals. This is something, because we have to be futuristic, and we must take cognizance of the fact that the people who are coming on board have variation in their training, they have got different exposures, but they also have different interests. So as a university, and the change that is needed with the support of the Ministry of Education, with our regulators, we need to find a mechanism of being into the future before the future arrives. So this is my general comment about it.
Professor Muganga, being into the future, you mentioned something earlier about self-regulation. Would self-regulation give institutions of higher education an advantage to reshape the education system?
Okay, now let's, I like what Professor Mpeza has just said. Let's start thinking like within a box, okay? Thinking that we live on earth and we are alone, Uganda. No, we should actually not even think without it, okay? Just think away from it completely. Don't even get closer to it. If you look around us, like in the world, universities are self-regulating, okay? What the Ministry of Education, through these agencies, National Council for Higher Education and anyone, come up with standards. And then give us the standards. And then before you clear us to start self-regulating, you have inspected, adhered to the fact that we have met every requirement you're looking for this institution to self-regulate. And then along the way, it can be terminal, like you have a period and say, every 3 years we're going to carry out an audit to see what is happening. So that is one way of saving resources and allowing institutions to be more creative, because sometimes you're going to find that these institutions are way ahead in whatever they are doing compared to what National Council for Higher Education is thinking.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So it's an opportunity for us to think about. So, but yeah.
If it's an opportunity, why then has, especially from the ministerial level, been failure for that realization that it should have been done way before even this conversation is taking place? Why are we failing to understand and appreciate that element?
That, of course, there are so many factors that are going to explain that, and I would be really deceiving you that I know so much. But one thing I know, that before the Act came into place, there was nothing like National Council. So the universities, if there were many, I think, how many universities were there? The universities were there, they were self-regulating with some inspection. Okay? So what changed then? Do they want to tell us that anyone who went to a university before 2001, okay, has a fake degree? Or the degrees offered, and
it would include them, because
and some people may argue that
they even say actually that those who attain those qualifications are the cream thing we talked about.
The degrees are of more value than today. That's an argument people put forward.
Yeah.
So if that was right then, maybe it's something we need to explore now. And I can guarantee you that we can do it better, because we know what we want to do as universities. We take time, we invest resources in benchmarking, in studying, in doing everything to make better things.
Okay.
All right?
You know what you want to do,
yes.
But then at the same time, the one that you're receiving to do what you want to do through them is of different criteria.
Let me tell you that
learning history, GPD,
history is not like
those things are not aiding.
No, history is not the problem.
How do you match?
Listen, history is not the problem. Earlier, you talked about international, so everyone is slapping international on their school to make it, because it's a money collecting machine now, all right? But let me tell you the problem we have. And I like contextualizing different things for viewers, for ourselves to understand. And if you can't understand this right now in this day and age that we live in. Now, let me give you a few. If you look at Africa, put together all the countries in Africa, their GDP, peak 2023, okay, was about $3.1 trillion. All countries. But guess what? One company, NVIDIA, today, its market cap is about $3.2 trillions. Microsoft, 3 and above trillions. Amazon, same story. Google, same story. More than the GDPs of the entire continent. And if those companies each was a country, they would be ranking in the top 10 countries. But what do they have in common? One common denominator, technology. Okay, has made them everything they are today, technology. Now you can ask yourself, the so-called School International, the so-called everything Cambridge, call it what? Who is teaching technology? That the world, where the world is today. If you're a parent, I am telling you, it doesn't matter which international, which everything, the world we are in today is driven by tech. We like it or not, if we don't pay attention to that, this education is what? At
Victoria University, you no longer have chalkboards, you have tech boards.
You have, let me even give you an example. And when we were starting these things at Victoria University, everyone thought, they are not sustainable, they are very expensive. Actually, they are saving resources. And guess what? Recently, I was amazed by the results of a survey done by some unit in our organization of all our students. Right. We were surveying different customer service. These students are our customers. Okay, we wanted their experience of the university. And then, because we emphasize a technology-driven university, we emphasize experiential learning or work-integrated learning. We don't emphasize sitting in a classroom and then we award you a degree just because you oversat in a classroom. Okay,
you sat in the classroom 70%.
Exactly. No. We want productivity. So experiential. How much experience do you have? How have you grasped technology, which is going to aid you in the world to come? So when we did the employment survey of we were so surprised. Even up to now, I'm so delighted. Like 87.2% of our students are all working, and they are still what?
Learning. They're still under the institute.
Exactly. Right. So that gave me hope that this is possible. Uganda can do it, right? You cannot give up right now. Like if you look at a world that is being driven by technology, and you're not taking the entire young people to go down that road. Which
census showed us it's going to become a problem at our hands as a country.
Actually, right now,
actually give it something to do. And I was
telling people that if the president was being briefed about national threats, okay, this is the way we are educating our young people is a national security threat.
All right.
And that must change.
The same president he speaks of has been advocating for science and technology in recent times, as so much money is being invested in science and technology.
Because Priscilla, something small. Something small. Because you see the intelligence we have here, beginning with yourself, Professor Mpeza, myself, and intelligence is wealth as well, right? But it doesn't matter anymore now. Whatever we know right now, AI can do better than us in this room.
Earlier on, we had to refer to AI to come up with a profile for me in case I was debating.
Exactly. But who is teaching to that? Who is informing the president that actually we have a national threat?
Let's have Professor Mpeza here also respond. Science and technology is the epitome of where you are today. And so how are you actually using it to transform? One, to actually implement it, because there's saying science and technology, but we are still using pen and paper in actually administering the science and technology in the first place. So how are you doing it on your side that can be copied and pasted to the lower levels of education?
I mean, I really wanted to also before I respond to that, the question you asked about why has it taken them so long, government so long, to try and think about change within the education system. You know, governments are bureaucratic in nature. And all the processes are very expensive for some reason, and there are also bureaucrats who remain comfortable in their seats. In fact, like the talk we are making of self-regulation, no one wants to hear that in the National Council. They say, no, please, you are not yet ready. Wait until you are ready.
But who determines readiness? Readiness is when you cast the stone into the fire and see if it will burn or not.
You have to trust. It's like when you go to a medical doctor.
Trust the process.
I mean, you have to trust the process and say, okay, this lady or gentleman who is sending me to the lab is well versed, and I trust. I put my life in his hands. So we need to develop this trust and confidence to a certain level, where the education providers are actually in charge of the process, but being regulated. Regulation means go on, but I'm going to regulate how you are doing it. That's the meaning. Not to come and do some bit of
police
micromanagement or whatever. I'm not saying that's what they are doing, but if you over-regulate, then you do not allow for innovation. Now at Equator, University of Science and Technology, this is a very young university, and so we are getting into integration of technology, digitalization, and making sure that we take the university to the people, because what technology does, it actually collapses the distance. It also makes learning more exciting, easier, and again, the regulator has got to be flexible enough to allow the things to happen. I don't know how Victoria University has succeeded. He's maneuvering. He has really maneuvered because he has actually demonstrated. And so we are saying, let this innovation be allowed in institutions. And there's another key thing with higher education, because we are talking about quality and transforming education.
We want to take a break and then we'll come back. So hold that school of thought right there.
So the issue, the entire issue is how ready are the institutions. Some institutions are ahead of the others. But how ready are our regulators? By the way, it's not only a National Council for Higher Education.
And that's a question I'm going to come back with, because in as much as, you know, as institutional level, you're trying to go the direction of science and technology, how ready is the ministry in acceptance of this change? How ready is the regulator in accepting and supporting the change that be forth? And we're also going to be returning with the question of science and technology. If it is the future, is it responsive with the national budget for the Ministry of Education in the financial year 2024-2025. All the answers coming your way after this break. Well, the debate is quite interesting with my panelists in studio. It all started with their responses to Professor Elly Katunguka's remarks, given the fact that there's that conflict between him and the executive director at the council level. One of the things he mentions is delays in submissions of minutes, then altercation of minutes of council meetings, falsifying information here and there, and also not following through certain procedures and guidelines that should be managing the system that then follows and trickles down to the institutions. We do have representatives of institutions that are pushing for science and technology, which is where we left the discussion with Professor Mpeza, saying that technology should be the way to go. It bridges the gap between the system and the community. It also provides easy solutions, but it also is proactive. It presents you with a labor force that is excitable to work with, and so that's why we left it off. And it then begs the question, with the new financial year and its budgeting, how much of this money has been allocated to ensure that this country is fast forward as far as science and technology is concerned? Professor Muganga.
So, let me tell you, where we are in education, you can do something about it, and I'm sure they have, if you watched the budget being read a few weeks ago, they had given something, okay? They had given something. And in giving something, one would argue that you need to understand, if there is a patient needing medication, okay, did you give them the right medicine? Was it sufficient given the doctor's prescription? So to us, the education system we are in today requires a lot of money. So it was not enough, to be precise. So we are talking about digitizing. Equator has told you the journey they have taken to digitize education, taking it to the people. Okay? So when you take it to the people, that requires money. But someone will also argue that, gentlemen, you're talking about technology, and it's universal. Like, how can you how can you have that happen around the country? There's no internet, no nothing. So,
because I remember COVID-19, you do have the minister trying their level best to be technology responsive, saying that students should be having computers, but you know, what's the cost of a computer?
Yeah.
That means that the taxman has to cut off some taxes for affordability of technology in the system.
But the good news is that there is also technology that can enable us, like for example Starlink, right? That is Elon Musk and his company trying to distribute mobile broadband kind of internet around the world. So far they are in 80 countries. So our job would be to simply sit down with this company, take Starlink to every district in this country, and it is very affordable. You just need to believe, to think, to innovate, and do something. So once you have that infrastructure set up in place, then what we are talking about becomes just a click away from just talking about things. So therefore, money needs to be, a lot of money needs to be invested in this education. And once we invest this, these resources into the education that actually is the engine of everything we are trying to do, then we are going to start having people that are more productive in our country, but we can even export them without leaving this country because they can do work elsewhere, but they are stationed here. So we will stop talking about a GDP of 45 billion US dollars. We'll talk about 100. We are going to start benefiting. Let me tell you this very, very quickly, Priscilla and viewers. Again, it has, I think people told me to talk about GDPs. So if you look at our GDP, okay, and to tell you that we are miseducating our population, and we need to change. So if you look at our GDP, it's about 46 billion dollars. The world GDP is $100 trillion as of 2023. We don't have data for 2024. Now, out of the 100, 13 trillion, just in 3 years, that magic has happened. 13 trillion, that's almost 13%, actually 13%, has been contributed by disruptive technologies. Just in a short term like that. But guess what is going, the rest of the 87% is the traditional economy, where Uganda is dominant. Everything we do is traditional economy. It's not driven by technology. But look at what is going to happen in 2030, 6 years from now. What is going to happen in 2030 is that the global GDP is going to be 300 trillion, forecasted to be 300 trillion. And out of that, 200 trillions, almost 70% is coming from disruptive technologies. And yet, now, the traditional economy is shrinking to 30%. And that's where Uganda is situated. The question again is, who is educating for the other bigger chunk, the 200 trillion, as in Uganda? Where do you put your money as a country when you're budgeting? You put it in education, you put it in technology, such that you can also be part of the disruptive story. Evidence is clear. You just need to look at the top 20 companies in the world. They are technologically driven. So if you want your country to also be top 100, you have to drive it technologically. Today, actually, if His Excellency was watching, I would encourage him to also now look for AI special presidential advisors. These people don't, these people don't earn a salary. They give him up-to-date information. They don't fall sick.
In comparison to global matters?
They will tell him what is happening in Russia, in the US, for free.
How the cows in Russia
but you know,
and they are not going to steal any money.
You know what Professor Muganga is forgetting? That AI assistant doesn't vote. So our traditional approach is that you have to take care of the constituency.
Your constituency. Now, now, those are the interests, conflicting interests. But we need to go away from personal what? Interests a little bit. And let's care about our country. Let's care about our citizens. So look at, if you embraced AI, for example, do you know what you're giving every child in this country? You're giving them a free teacher in their pocket, whom they can ask a question anytime, a tutor to do homework for free anytime. You just need to invest in this infrastructure, and you're going to ensure equity and equality and access education that is accessible, meaning the children from the global north, whatever they are studying today, with technology, the children or the child of the global south can study the same thing.
Okay. All right. While we wait to get there,
no, we are there. Other than Uganda is not yet there.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That's Uganda.
the world is there.
That one of them had been mentioned. Professor Mpeza, you talked about the Sustainable Development Goals. In there indicated that by 2030, all girls and boys should be having complete, free, equitable, and quality primary education as well as secondary education. And this should be leading to a relevant and effective learning outcome according to UNESCO 2022. So you're seeing all these elements, and begs the question, will there be such a time as this for us as a country, and when are we going to be respondent to some of these policies that we subscribe to?
I really think that every journey starts with the first step. So this is critical. And together we can actually cumulatively arrive at our destination. So you need a correct policy framework. And by the way, government is so good at designing policies, doing all sorts of consultation. The problem is what percentage of the implementation takes place. So once we have a clear policy framework and we are actually good to go, then aligning whatever we do in education institutions with the sustainable development goals. And by the way, after 2030, something else is going to come. And we do have actually education for sustainable development, which incorporates the need to empower the girl child to ensure they have equitable, quality education, which is also meaningful and relevant to what they do in their lives. So for us as universities, we may be moving faster. Some universities actually move faster than the environment itself.
Yeah, because you have to attract, global markets.
Yes, but then somebody will pat you on the shoulders and say, hang on. This is not yet within the regulation. This is outside the framework. So this is where we have an issue, and where we would like to advise and say, let's, even if we now decide to have some club universities, by club I mean those that are actually fast-tracking in whatever they do, adoption of technology, integration of technology, enabling learning, blending and so on and so forth. Those can actually be given certain standards and say, okay, you fly. And then the rest can actually benchmark. For me, this is where I want us to have some kind of free thought within our higher education in order to transform it from now what is being seen as outdated to a transformative education system that can fit the global needs. We are training for global citizens, not for Uganda.
Now, both of you, I can't give you closing remarks because this conversation will never be closed until we have the realization on ground. But we do have Stephen Mbidde, who's on ground, to also give us a traffic update in that regard. Good morning to you, Stephen. Now, as the secretary of this council meeting here in Morning at NTV, bringing it to a close and asking my council members what's the way forward in this financial year, where are the opportunities that lie within improving the education? So I'll start with Professor Mpeza.
First of all, as a summary, we hope and pray that both Professor Katunguka and Professor Mary Ojakwol will find space to harmonize the seemingly minor differences that probably have a very big impact on us as institutions of higher learning. But the second point is that we need to find mechanisms by integration of technology to find mechanisms of making keeping the quality of education higher but making it affordable,
okay,
and that technology will do the trick for us.
All right, Professor Muganga.
Thank you so much, Priscilla, and the viewers who have endured us all this time. Hopefully we have lived up to your expectations. But my really humble request to the amazing professors that we have, it is to simply request that let's play for one team, that is Team Higher Education. The country needs us to steer it through this education revolution that is really, really driven by technology. We cannot afford wounds that are self-inflicted. Okay. So we need to really get together. So to the parents out there, demand an education that is technologically driven. That is what works.
Okay. All right. Those are their 2 cents, which bring us to the close of this conversation. We trust that's been allusive to what you need to make a decision about, especially as far as the education sector is concerned, for yourself, for the people around you. Morning at NTV, wishing you a good day.